Hey guys, welcome to the video. On this video, I want to talk about what not communicating communicates to your head of household. When we kind of shut down with our words, when we don't say what's on our mind, when we don't communicate in a respectful and appropriate way, that communicates a lot to your head of household. That communicates an attitude of disrespect. It's almost like a barrier between you and your head of household, and you create that barrier with your silence. And it is not okay. It's not acceptable to not communicate to your head of household, because a head of household is responsible for their taken in hand, and they are responsible to lead their taken in hand. They have a responsibility to take care of their taken in hand. And when we don't communicate to them, we really do make their job so much harder. And I don't know, I have seen so many times where, not necessarily in domestic discipline, but just in relationships in general, where a wife will refuse communication to her husband, and then she blames him for not being able to fulfill his role as a husband. So as taken in hands, we have a responsibility to communicate to our head of household, because that allows them to fulfill their responsibility to lead us, to guide us, to watch over us, to protect us, to do all the things that are within their role. And so we want to make sure that we are communicating, but when we don't communicate, we are still communicating, but it's not anything good. So not communicating can be intentional and it can be unintentional. And so when we are intentionally not communicating, that can look like the silent treatment. That can look like shutting down, trying to just create physical distance between you and your head of household. These are willingly chosen behaviors. These are intentionally disrespectful behaviors. These forms of non-communication are probably the most active and definitely the most chosen forms of not communicating. It would surprise me if a head of household did not take these very seriously, because they are chosen, because they are intentional, because they are acts of direct defiance and direct disobedience and direct disrespect. It would surprise me if these did not result in pretty serious punishment. And I think that if you are exhibiting these behaviors, then you should establish with your head of household, you should go to them and apologize and establish with your head of household that you want to be held accountable if you are not already, because these are things that break down your relationship. These are things that cause dissension in your relationship. And so they should be punished severely. And that is the only way to break these habits, is to have consistent and severe consequences for these things happening. But unintentional non-communication can happen too. And these are the things that are a little bit harder to recognize, and these are things that are going to be harder to change. Unintentional forms of non-communication are getting lost in your thoughts. It's almost like a inward spiral, just a little bit. I don't know if I would consider this like a full-blown spiral. It can be. This definitely can lead to a full-blown spiral out of control, but it's definitely just this lost in thoughts, and you're not actually communicating or looking to your head of household for guidance. And so you are shutting down communication, whether you intend to or not. That is what is actually happening. And also that can lead to the next thing, which is retreating within yourself. Just having this attitude of I need to hold myself. I need to carry myself. And just retreating within yourself and getting really quiet in the process. That is a form of lack of communication. And we are not meant to bear the burden of our own emotional weight. Our head of household is there to carry us. He is there to bear the burdens of our emotions, because we need to lean on them for that guidance, for that leadership. And they can handle it. So we need to give that to them. And when we don't feel like we can, when we don't feel like we should, and we start to retreat it within ourselves, we are cutting off communication. We are severing connection to our head of household. The last thing that you can maybe do unintentionally, and this one can definitely be intentional as well, but just keeping yourself busy. Maybe you are trying to avoid communication. You're trying to avoid your head of household. Maybe you are, avoiding a conversation or avoiding a confrontation. And so you just keep yourself really, really busy for whatever reason, just to avoid slowing down long enough to actually have to kind of check in with them or have a conversation with them. This is something that is super detrimental to the communication because it makes it to where you don't look at your head of household as someone you can go to when things are tense, when things are hard. And it again is just taking that authority away from your head of household and placing it into your hands. And that is not what you should be doing. Anytime you try to maintain your own emotions, anytime you try to carry yourself, or anytime that you try to solve any type of communication problems in your relationship, you're actually creating more problems because you're breaking down the communication, you're avoiding the communication, and you are stepping outside the authority of your head of household. So you need to really just not do that and lean in, because when we don't communicate to our head of household, whether it's intentional or unintentional, what we are really communicating to our head of household is a lack of trust. A lack of trust in their leadership, a lack of trust in their role, a lack of trust in their position in the relationship. And that is really, really detrimental. And when we don't trust our head of household, that also means that we don't respect them. And so if you are not communicating to your head of household and he is feeling that, he's feeling disrespected in that process. And it's because you are saying to him, you are not trustworthy. I don't trust you to do your job in this relationship. And so I'm going to go ahead and do it for you. And that is extremely disrespectful. And whether you intend it to or not, that does communicate an attitude of just not wanting to be under their authority. And when you are not under their authority, you undermine their ability to take leadership in the relationship. By not communicating, you're not giving them the information that they need to make decisions, to lead you, to lead the relationship. And you are making it so much harder for them to step in and offer leadership and guidance because you are being so withdrawn and closed off, and it creates disconnection. That's what that communicates to your head of household, is that, you're not trusting them, you're not under their authority, and then that completely undermines their ability to lead you. And all of this leads to a breakdown of structure. So when you don't have trust, when you are displaying a lack of trust and respect in your head of household, when you are stepping outside of their authority, and when you are allowing that communication breakdown to undermine their leadership, all of the structures of your relationship are in jeopardy, and your structures can start to break down and fall apart. And so the only way to really rectify this lack of communication, the only way to fix these things from happening is through discipline. This is one area where I will say that spanking is always the answer, because you need to reestablish the roles of submission and authority in the relationship. You need to come back under your head of household's authority. And really, in my opinion, the only way to do that is through receiving a spanking, because that will force you to acknowledge their authority, come under their authority, and it will kind of correct the behavior of not communicating to them, and it will make you open to communication. It'll make you more open to sharing with your head of household the things that you've been holding and withholding from them. And so this is one area where I will say that, it might be futile to try to rectify this without some form of spanking, because it will help the head of household reestablish authority. It'll help you as a taken in hand submit to that authority, come under that authority, and help you be more open to communication and understanding your role and your place in the relationship. So all of that to say, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you got something out of it, and we will talk to you next time.